Welcome back. Iran launching nearly 200 missiles at Israel hours after Israel launched its limited ground incursion into Lebanon, targeting the Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorist group. Look at these missiles coming at Israel overnight. Iran says this attack was in retaliation for the killing of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah last week, as well as Hamas's leader back in July. Most of these missiles were shot down by the U.S. and Israel, or they missed their targets. President Biden and Vice President Harris claimed that they were monitoring the attack from the Situation Room with their national security team. Here's a picture of them. Here's what Harris and former President Trump had to say about Iran's attack yesterday.
I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself against Iran and Iran-backed terrorist militias. My commitment to the security of Israel is unwavering. And let us be clear, Iran is not only a threat to Israel, Iran is also a threat to American personnel in the region.
They are very close to global catastrophe. We have a non-existent president and a non-existent vice president who should be in charge, but nobody knows what's going on. That's why Israel was under attack just a little while ago, because they don't respect our country anymore. The two incompetent people running our country are leading us to the brink of World War III, a war like no other. This is what the policies of weakness and appeasement have brought to the world.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is being slammed this morning for writing an op-ed the same day as Iran's attack on Israel, touting how great the Biden administration's foreign policy record has been. Blinken writes this: the Biden administration's strategy has put the United States in a much stronger geopolitical position today than it was 4 years ago. Not sure what he's looking at. Joining me now is Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, the ranking member of the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, as well as a member of the Senate Armed Services and Agricultural Committees. Senator, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Maria. Thank you.
First, let me get your take on John Kerry's position that the U.S. is in a much better place today than 4 years ago. Well, John Kerry said it as well as Antony Blinken in this op-ed. What is he talking about?
Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about, because as we sit here today, the world is not in a better place than it was 4 years ago. What we have seen with this administration is absolute appeasement of our nation's worst enemies, including Iran. So they have continued to allow funding for Iran through the illicit sale of oil. We know when President Donald Trump was in office, he put them in a box. The world was safer. Iran was under control. We pushed back against China. We didn't see Russia going into Ukraine, and we certainly didn't have the Gaza Strip and West Bank in an absolute mess. So what I want to remind all of your viewers, Maria, is that on October 7th, we saw over 40 Americans murdered by a terrorist organization that is funded by Iran. They hauled 8 Americans into the Gaza Strip. Where is the retribution from the United States for what Iran has done to the American people?
That's
Nothing.
Right.
We're not in a better position. I don't know what Secretary Blinken is talking about.
Well, I mean, by the way, this is some of the stuff I wanted to hear last night from the vice presidential debate. I feel that as well as J.D. Vance did, he missed a lot of opportunities to basically say the obvious. The world is on fire. And your woman has been in charge. Okay, whether it's from inflation at 40-year highs to a wide open border that has caused murder of American citizens, or an attack on Israel and an attack on Ukraine. The world is on fire thanks to your U.S. foreign policy. And I just wonder how Kamala Harris gets away with saying my commitment to Israel is unwavering when we know darn well that this administration held back critical weapons to Israel in the middle of its fight of its life.
Absolutely. You go, Maria, because I am right there with you. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have let this go on. They are just failing at every level of leadership. So again, we have Americans that are under threat directly from Iran. This is a group that has open assassination attempts out there, or open calls for assassination on former administration officials, including President Trump. This has all happened in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
What I have heard from leaders all around the globe, and in particular the Arab leaders in the Middle East, they have been asking, where is American leadership? And Maria, 4 weeks ago, while I was in the region for my 4th trip since October 7th, I actually had one of our close friends and allied partners, an Arab leader, that said, I have given up on the United States of America. That tells you how the world views President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yeah, and you knew that when Israel did that whole pager explosion and the U.S. knew nothing about it, that, Israel is no longer sharing information with the United States, critical information. Look, I've got to get your take on how it's possible that Iran is generating these billions in profits by selling oil, wherever it's selling oil on the black market or anywhere, and yet Karine Jean-Pierre can sit there at a podium and say that the administration has not changed any sanctions. So how is it, explain how it is that this administration is allowing Iran to make all this money when Karine Jean-Pierre just said a minute ago, we played the soundbite, that this administration has not changed the sanctions?
Well, Maria, this is the deal, and I have said this before, that this administration is talking out of both sides of their mouths. So while they'll say on one hand, ooh, we have sanctions on Iran, we haven't changed those, out of the other side of their mouth, what they're doing is telling the Department of Justice, we will not interdict those oil tankers that are carrying Iranian oil. We know exactly what tankers have Iranian oil, and yet this administration will do nothing about those tankers. Hence, the $100+ billion that J.D. Vance referenced last night that has gone into the coffers of Iran, which are funding the Houthis, which attack Americans, Hamas, who killed Americans, and Hezbollah, which is striking to the north of Israel right now. So it's got to stop.
If Iran outwardly comes out and threatens a former U.S. president, which is what they've done, okay, we know that Iran is trying to assassinate President Trump. And they go one step beyond and they hack into a former president's campaign. Do you see that as an act of war?
Absolutely, I do.
So how come there's been no response whatsoever from the Biden-Harris team? Okay,
well,
you have the leading state sponsor of terrorists telling you that that they are going to assassinate a former leader of America, and we're hacking into his campaign, and there's no response?
Well, Maria, one, it's President Trump, and he is a Republican. So there's a separate playbook for those that are on the conservative side of the aisle. So, unfortunately, this is the situation. But
that's disgusting.
President Kamala Harris will do nothing about it. She will continue with appeasement.
And by the way, what is this whole idea that they won't get involved in this port strike? We are about to have no produce on the shelves that we need. Leading U.S. business groups are calling on the president to intervene in this port strike. Thousands of unionized dock workers with the International Longshoremen's Association hitting the picket line yesterday, Senator. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Association of Manufacturers, and the Associated Builders and Contractors and the National Retail Federation all released statements urging Biden to invoke the Taft-Hartley Act, which would restore operations at ports during an 80-day cool-down period, with negotiations continuing. So what should happen now? And by the way, there was no questions on this last night at the VP debate.
No, there wasn't. And surprisingly, because this is going to impact our U.S. economy. And if we want to think about our military, gosh, if we need to send anything overseas, think about vehicles, armor, it's not going to go by ship, is it? So it's impacting our projection of strength as well.
Oh, wow. That's a really good point. Great point on the armed services and the weaponry that needs to go there as well. Real quick, let's get to the border, because you introduced a new bipartisan bill yesterday. It's called the Be Gone Act, Be Gone, to expedite the deportation of illegal migrants convicted of sexual assault and aggravated sexual violence. Are you serious? Is there an actual debate about deporting people who have committed sexual violence in this country?
Well, yes, Maria, there is. We have over 16,000 folks that have been convicted of sexual assault and sexual predatory acts, and yet here they are in the great old United States of America. Thank you so much, Vice President Kamala Harris.
And what about these 13,000 migrants that have already committed murder and they're running around America right now? Do we know where they are? Because the administration is pushing back on that, saying that that data was misinterpreted.
Nope, get them out, Maria. That's what my act will do.
All right, Senator, thanks very much for being here this morning.
You
Joni
bet.
Ernst joining us this morning in New York. We'll be right back. Stay with us.